Thank you to EA for sponsoring this video. Ranked in Season 16 definitely has a different feel than previous ones. Now, not because the system itself has changed, but more so because a lot of the circumstances have shifted. In this video, I'll break down my best tips to get you out of whatever rank you're stuck in and into the rank you've always wanted. Trust me when I say this, that these tips apply to all of the ranks. So let's get into it. Tip number 1. Understand what the different map rotations mean for your team. Because of the maps now changing every 24 hours between Broken Moon, World's Edge, and Storm Point, I believe it's important to evaluate what legend you're playing on each map. And if you play with a squad of friends, well, it's equally as important that you all look at what legend comps work best on each map. You'll see this be done a lot in pro play, where a team will have a specific legend comp for World's Edge, but then when it switches over to Storm Point, the legend comp does too. This is because each map is designed with the intention of embracing different playstyles. And I didn't just make this up, one of the Apex map designers literally said it. This is why we all have our favorite maps, because truly they all are unique and bring in different features from one another. World's Edge is the smallest map of the three, then Broken Moon, and then Storm Point is obviously the largest. This affects rotations, landings, fights, basically every aspect to the game. So it's important to understand. As far as what legends to play on what maps, well, that could take a long time to get in depth on, but I'll give you a couple examples of how things change up. Defensive legends like Caustic and Watson typically are better on World's Edge because of the design of the buildings on that map. They are specific to World's Edge, and Caustic and Watson's abilities seem to work better. Another example is you're going to see Catalyst a lot more this season, but I think more particularly on maps like Storm Point or Broken Moon. And I think that's because these maps are much more wide open and obviously larger than World's Edge. You'll also see Bangalore played a lot on Storm Point. This is because of all of the open space and how her smokes and her ultimate act on a larger map. Now, a lot of people could find counterpoints to justify the legend they want to play on whatever map is in rotation that day, and that's totally fine. There is some nuance to it, and there's going to be some legends that will just do well on all of the maps, legends like Bloodhound, Seer, or Valkyrie. And this is because of the viability these legends offer in such a wide range of scenarios. Basically, how good their kits are overall. In the lower ranks, the legend comps won't be as evident as it will be in the higher elos. But I believe the sooner you can become flexible with legend picks this split, the more success you will find. Tip number 2, look for specific fights. Yes, you're going to want to play for kill points, but you don't want to get too greedy. This is not team deathmatch. You do not have to fight every single team that you see or hear gunshots from. For some reason, I've noticed a lot of players while solo queuing in Diamond, Platinum, or sometimes even Gold, love to try and push every single fight, whether their randoms are with them or not. And this, by and large, is obviously a pretty bad game plan. You're going to want to play smart, look for easier fights while solo queuing. And if you're playing with a squad, then do the same, but you can obviously use your discretion much better when you're with a full team. I'm not saying you only need to third-party fights, but running into the middle of the map when there's some mid-game throwdown of 5 teams fighting over one building is generally not a great idea, especially if you already have some KP to work with. Now, I'll get into this more in a second, but just understand I found the best way to approach ranked is positioning should nearly always take priority over kills. Why? Because positioning literally gives you the opportunities to get kill points. A huge misstep a lot of players make is watching what the pros in Predator ranked do. Not all of them do this, but most will push every fight they hear because they kinda need to in order to go positive in that match. So it's important when watching them that number 1, you understand that the buy-in for Predator is much different, and 2, you are most likely not playing with 2 other pro players. So you're going to want to try to take a different approach and use your discretion while taking fights. What fights specifically should you look to take? Well, if you already have 2 to 3 KP because you got contested off drop and you won that fight and you're towards the middle of the match, I would only take a fight if it's either on the very edge of zone or if it's a fight you are simply forced to take. Any other fights, I will generally avoid. Because towards the middle of the game, it's rarely ever about just one team. It usually becomes a third, fourth, or fifth party. Everybody else is thinking, hey, let's look for a third party opportunity, right? So if you play it smart, especially if you're with randoms, I'd look to be very cautious during the middle of the game. Now, if you get no KP early game and you feel like, we just need to find a fight because we have no KP, I understand that. Don't force it though. If an opportunity's there, great, look to take it. But if it isn't, don't trip out. And once again, just focus more on where the circle is pulling and try to hold down some favorable real estate in that next zone. Trust me, this will always provide opportunities to get more kills, and at the same time should help you place higher in the match. Coincidentally, both of these are mandatory to gaining RP in Season 16. Number 3, communication has to be the #1 difference maker for finding success in ranked. Now, at least be open-minded to it every game. If you're playing with randoms, this can be a daunting task. Some people will just be difficult to work with, and if those same people become out of line, well, Apex will handle them. However, the majority of players I've found will share the same goal as you, to rank up. So I always try to call stuff out, especially since I know it can make a difference in the outcome of the game. Sometimes the randoms won't say a word, or they won't listen at all, but at least I did my part. And I can only really control what I do in Apex, and that's what I try to keep my focus on. If you're playing with a friend or two, well, even better. This is a great opportunity for you guys to communicate more. Try to establish an in-game leader for every match so that when things get crazy, your team has one voice to listen to. The in-game leader should typically be the best all-around player, but more importantly, the best communicator on the squad too. This doesn't mean the other two players don't have any input on situations. It just means there should be less confusion around who's following who, particularly when it's a fast-paced moment in Apex, which will be fairly often in ranked. Now, I know some will think communication seems obvious, but the reality is more players just need to be reminded of this rather than taught. Go watch your favorite streamers. Listen to what they say regarding what they're doing, what they're trying to do, what they may see, and also pay attention to how their teammates listen to that and react appropriately. Remember, Apex is often a game of seconds, and this is why communicating and listening becomes so vital as you climb the ranks. And I always say to players, communication is the one area of your game that you can improve at the quickest. So try to be a bit more vocal when it matters in Season 16, and I promise it will yield you results. Tip number 4, we got to talk about your drops. Your drop is the first right decision you need to make in any battle royale. So I got to go over what to do, what to avoid, and what to look for. Now, keep in mind, this is the most overlooked tip in all of Apex, as a ton of mistakes can stem from a poor drop. If you're solo queuing and you're looking for a good drop spot, watch where the traffic goes while you're still in the dropship. I always try to select my legend at the select screen so that I have a higher chance of getting jump master, and this way I can ensure the fact of taking a safe or smart drop. If I'm gonna look for a 50-50, I always try to scout out a specific isolated POI that has a low chance of getting third party. This can work out if me and my team land correctly and don't give the enemy more space, but the safest route with randoms is to land uncontested generally. This will help you guys ensure the fact that you're able to get looted up, and then you can rotate into zone and find what's next. As far as where to drop, well, that'll be a variable. It's going to change every match. But what I can do is recommend avoiding certain places. Those places are centrally located POIs that will attract a lot of other teams, whether that's off drop or shortly after you land and you wind up fighting. These places you want to avoid would be Promenade and the surrounding areas near it on Broken Moon, Antenna on Storm Point. This POI is especially awkward because of the triangular layout of it, and it can force some fights that you may otherwise not want. And the third one is Fragment on World's Edge. While all of you are probably familiar with this POI, it's probably the most forgiving because it has some outplay abilities with all of the different buildings, but it still nonetheless will attract a lot of teams. At all of these places, fighting one team can quickly turn into fighting 4 others. And for this reason, I'm always trying to avoid places like this, whether I'm solo queuing or playing with a group of friends. Now, every match I try to gauge where I want to land, and then once the ring sets, I try to focus on where I want to rotate from. This way, I'm really aware of the places I'd like to avoid. And this all is going to depend on where the majority of the other teams landed and what the flight path was of the dropship. If players could be a little bit more disciplined with their drops, I guarantee they would see better results early game. I hope these tips help you out in Season 16. Thanks for watching. Peace.